Okay, guys, so previously we were looking at this question, BMAT 2015, question 13, talking about, I think it was talking about urea and how it differs on hot and cold days, mainly talking about how the kidneys work. So hopefully that has made sense, guys. But now, guys, we move on to the next question, which is BMAT 2014, question 1. So let's read. It says, the following statements relate to blood flow through the heart, and it says, which of these statements is or are correct? And you have 4 statements to choose from. So guys, give yourself a minute, pause the video, make sure you're back after a minute. We'll be going through the solutions. Okay, okay, guys, welcome back. Let's go through this now. So this question is mainly talking about, how blood flows through the heart and through the circulatory system in total. And generally, at GCSE, you're probably taught the 4-chamber model. So just, a box, right? So you have a box and you split it into 4 chambers, right? And then the top chambers are going to be your atrium, and then obviously our left is going to be the patient's right. So this is going to be the right atrium, left atrium, and the bottom chambers, the more muscular ones, because they need to pump blood out to a greater distance, is going to be the right ventricle and the left ventricle. So essentially, guys, if you recall, you probably even learned this at AS level. If you recall, essentially what's happening, you have the superior vena cava. So superior vena cava, which is draining blood from everything above the diaphragm, and then you have the inferior vena cava, draining blood from everything below the diaphragm. They duct into the right atrium, and then once you're in the right atrium, what happens is that you come to the right ventricles. Right, so then you're into the right ventricles, and then essentially what happens is that when blood drains from the superior vena cava, the inferior into the right atrium, the pressure builds up because you have a fixed volume in there, and you're essentially bringing more stuff inside that fixed volume. Therefore, obviously, you're going to increase the pressure. And on top of that, you also get atrial contraction, especially. Atrial contraction, it doesn't really happen in young healthy people, but as you grow older, also if you're unhealthy, right atrium contraction becomes more significant. But then that also adds to increase the pressure in the right atrium. Therefore, it makes the pressure in the right atrium greater than the pressure in the right ventricle, and then it opens this valve. This is going to be called the right atrial ventricular valve, or you can also call it the tricuspid valve. Right, so it goes through the tricuspid valve. And then following on from that, then what happens is that the pressure in the right ventricle increases through A, because it's filling with blood, and B, because also it's going to contract much stronger than the right atrium. And then that opens the door then to a vessel, which over here is going to be called the pulmonary artery. Artery because it's going away from the heart. Pulmonary because is associated with the lungs. And the valve that opens here, guys, is going to be called the right semilunar valve or the pulmonary valve. Either one of those would do. And then this obviously goes to the lungs, right, to get rid of the CO2 and to input oxygen. And then from here you have a vessel which is coming back. So obviously arteries, they give rise to veins, and then this comes back, but this time to the left atrium, right? So this is going to be called the pulmonary vein, and this comes back through the pulmonary vein to the left atrium, and then what happens is the same thing happens. So you have more blood in a fixed volume. That's going to increase your pressure, and also on top of that, you're going to have some contrast. Basically, whatever's happening on the right is happening to the left. If anything on the left is happening to a greater extent because it's generally more muscular. So then again, you open. So the blood comes back, and then you open this valve. It goes into the left ventricle. That's going to be called the left atrioventricular valve or the mitral valve, right? So either one of those would do. And then from the left ventricle, this gives rise to, I'm going to kind of show it overlapping here. This is the main, this is the big one. So this is going to be called the aorta, right? So the aorta then sends blood essentially to the rest of the body. And then the valve over here is going to be called the left semilunar valve or the aortic valve. Either one of those would do. And that's basically how this system works. So from that, guys, we should have enough information to answer this question. It says oxygenated blood flows through the right side of the heart. That's wrong. It's because the right side of the heart it's deoxygenated, and you get oxygenated after you go to the lungs, and then after the lungs, that's going to be on the left side, isn't it? You see, guys, also, what I'm trying to do is I'm revising as I'm going along. Although that question's wrong, I'm correcting it just to make sure I understand how the system's working. And it says the vena cava empties deoxygenated blood into the ventricle. That's wrong because it goes to the right atrium, so that can't be right. It says heart pumps oxygenated blood through the pulmonary artery. No, it actually pumps deoxygenated blood through the pulmonary artery, isn't it? So that has to be wrong. And then just looking at the answer, guys, in the answers, there's at least one of the options has to be true. So that means 4 has to be true. But we can just test it out. There's a valve that prevents backflow of blood from the aorta into the left ventricle, and that's true. That's the aortic valve, isn't it? And obviously, if the aortic valve isn't working properly, guys, what you can actually get, you can get two scenarios. You can get the valve doesn't open properly, meaning blood can't enter the aorta, or you can have a leaky valve where blood can actually regurgitate backwards. That's just extra information. You don't really have to know that. But yeah, 4 is the answer, and therefore, guys, hopefully you can understand that C is the correct answer for this question. So hopefully, guys, that has made sense, and I look forward to seeing you in the next clip. All right, guys, so welcome back. So previously, we were looking at BMAT 2014, question 1, really talking about how blood flows through the circulatory system. Hopefully, guys, aided with the information about the circulatory system, that was pretty straightforward. But now, guys, we move on to the same paper, but question 13. It says, in humans, the water content of the blood is regulated by the hormonal system. Which of the following occur when the water content of the blood is too low? And then you have 6 options. So guys, pause the video, give yourself a minute, be back after that minute where we'll be going through the solution. Okay, guys, so let's go through this. It says the water content of the blood is too low, i.e. the water potential is going to be low because you have a load of solute and you have less water. Now, if the water potential is low, guys, remember you want to, therefore, this is a negative feedback system. I probably haven't mentioned this term, but it's really important in homeostasis. Negative feedback is this idea that you essentially have a set point. You want the water level to be at a set level, and then when it goes too low, you want to bring it back up. When it goes too high, you want to bring it back down, right? And then the opposite of that is positive feedback. An example of positive feedback, the best example I like to give students is that if, for example, you're revising for a test, you do good in that test, right? Then this is going to push you in the next test to work even harder. So you had a set level in which you worked at, but as you get better and better results, you work harder. So you're deviating from that set level as you go along. But homeostasis is mainly dealing with negative feedback coming back to this set level. So in this case, a set water potential. So what we want to do here is increase the water potential back up to the normal level. And therefore, the main thing that should be popping into your head, guys, is antidiuretic hormone. So as it says in antidiuretic hormone, diuretic means peeing. So anti-peeing hormone. So it stops you from peeing. I.e. the way it does that is if you have remember this is the collecting duct. Essentially what this does, the easiest way to visualize, obviously this actually isn't what happens, but the easiest way to visualize it is that it makes holes in the collecting duct. And therefore when it makes holes, water can leak out. And obviously if water leaks out, that means that in your nephron and in the kidney in general, the tubes, you have less water, therefore you're going to pee out less, hence antidiuretic hormone. But you're reabsorbing water, which is going to bring back your water potential back up. So let's look at here. So in this case, yeah, the pituitary can release more ADH. So this is true. This is incorrect. And then increase water reabsorption again, or decrease. Or that's obviously going to increase water reabsorption because the ADH is going to make the collecting duct more leaky. So this one is true. That one's false. And then it says increase the absorption of glucose in the kidney and decrease the absorption of glucose. Those actually, so remember, ADH has nothing to do with glucose reabsorption, isn't it? In fact, glucose reabsorption is always quite close to 100%, unless you have diabetes. And in the case of diabetes, what happens is you don't have to know this, but essentially you filter out all your glucose. But in the case of diabetes, you have a high blood sugar level, so you're going to filter out a load of glucose. You're going to overwhelm the system, which essentially reabsorbs the glucose. Hence why essentially glucose starts appearing in the urine, and hence why you have the term diabetes mellitus, which I think means sweet urine, right? So yeah, this has no effect, so both these are going to be incorrect. So hopefully, guys, you can understand then that B is going to be the correct answer in this instance. So hopefully, guys, that has made sense, and I look forward to seeing you in the next clip. All right, guys, so previously we looked at BMAT 2014 question 13, this question to do with ADH, and hopefully, guys, you're starting to appreciate that the kidney and topics surrounding the kidneys are really prevalent in the BMAT. So it's really important that you make sure you understand and you have firm grip on that topic. But now, guys, we move on to BMAT 2014 question 17. It says, which of the following statements about lipid digestion in the small intestine is or are correct? So guys, pause the video, give yourself a minute, and make sure you're back after that minute. We'll be going through the solution. And also, guys, just a heads up that whenever you see a star in relation to some questions, that means that this is a question where quite a few students got wrong. So that's just a heads up. So guys, make sure you're back after the minute. We'll be going through the solution. Okay, guys, so let's go through this. This is emulsification by bile makes small lipid drops, each with a smaller surface area. So let's talk about what this concept of emulsification, because I think it's really important to understand what's going on essentially. So imagine, guys, this is some lipid droplets. So these are just some blobs of fat, right? Essentially, guys, since fat is hydrophobic, it doesn't like water, and obviously most of the time these lipid droplets would be immersed in water. So since they're hydrophobic, they don't like to be water. They essentially want to be with other hydrophobic things, and they obviously have that amongst themselves. In there, they're all hydrophobic. So rather than bonding with the water, they'll just bond with each other, and then they'll form just one huge blob, essentially, right? But then what essentially bio is a amphitheatic molecule. So an amphitheatic molecule is just a molecule. Let's draw something like this. So it's just a molecule which has two parts. It has a hydrophobic part, right? So I'm just going to write H-phobic and H-philic part. So a part that likes water and a part that hates. So if you have a phobia, you hate something. So hydrophobic means you don't like water. So essentially what happens is what the bile can do is that it can actually facilitate this form over here. And the way it can facilitate this form is that imagine this is all immersed in a solution. For example, it's going to be immersed in chyle, isn't it? So chyle is basically the liquidy stuff which forms after you pass the stomach and you've done some digestion and you've mixed everything with, acid and fluids and all of that. So it becomes really watery, right? You probably, for example, guys, when you vomit out, that's essentially kind of coming out from your stomach, isn't it? So when you vomit out, the food isn't solid; it's more, a liquidy, sludgy sort of thing, right? So essentially, what the bile does, it would associate with the lipid droplets, something like this. So let's just say something like this, right? So can you see this part over here would essentially bond with the chyle, essentially this the fluid, chyle fluid. So the fluid in the chyle, which is going to be polar because it's going to have water and amongst other things, and this hydrophobic part would be associated with the actual lipid droplets. So do you see now, guys? Rather than the fat droplets associated with each other to form just one big blob, they can actually separate with the help of the bowel, right? So emulsification, emulsification is this, so going from this direction to that direction. So emulsification by bowel makes small lipid droplets. Yes, it is making small lipid droplets, each with a smaller surface area. That's true. So each of these guys, if you measure the circumference of that compared to the circumference of that, each of those has a smaller surface area. So this is true. The main point is, guys, that if I call the total surface area here X and the surface area here Y, X will be greater than Y. So the total surface area amongst the small lipid droplets will be greater than the total surface area in the fat droplet, a big fat droplet. Okay, and the next one says bowel contains an alkali to reduce the pH of the material from the stomach. So this is actually incorrect, right? So the thing which actually reduces the pH comes from the pancreatic secretion. So the pancreas, it can secrete bicarbonate, which essentially acts to reduce the pH of the material which is coming from the stomach. But that's not a function of bowel. The reason why you might be confused is that so the bile which is coming from the gallbladder, which is inadvertently coming from the liver, right? They duct into the small intestine at the same point as the pancreatic secretions duct in, right? But you have to make sure, you have to understand the bile doesn't have the alkali, the alkali is coming from the pancreas. This can't be correct. And then lastly, lipase secreted in bowel breaks bond in lipids to produce glycerol and fatty acids, right? So the last part is true, but the lipase, again, it isn't in the bowel, it's in the pancreatic secretion, which essentially kind of join in with the bowel and enter the small intestine at the same point, but they're not actually from the bowel, so this can't be true. So then hopefully, guys, you can appreciate then that the answer would be A in this case. So again, guys, I think one of the main reasons that people got this question wrong is because of the first one, because you're probably used to just hearing emulsification and large surface area, but you have to really understand, what does it mean, large surface area? It means large total surface area rather than individual surface area. So hopefully, guys, that has made sense, and I look forward to seeing you in the next clip. All right, guys, so welcome back. So previously we looked at BMAT 2014, the starred question 17, to do with digestion, and in particular the digestion of lipids. So hopefully, guys, that idea of bowel and lipase and stuff like that has all made sense. But now, guys, we move on to BMAT 2013 question 1. It says, which of the following applies to both the nervous system and the endocrine hormonal system? So guys, pause the video, give yourself a minute, and make sure you're back after that minute. We'll be going back through the solution. Okay, guys, welcome back. So number one, it says they can both be involved in homeostasis. So remember this homeostasis idea of a constant internal environment. Essentially, that's what homeostasis means, and that's this idea essentially of negative feedback, keeping everything at a constant level. So so the endocrine system, this for sure can do that, isn't it? For an example of that is just insulin, for example. So insulin acts to reduce blood glucose level when it's high. So when blood glucose is high, insulin comes in, blood glucose is back to the set level around 5 millimoles. Right? When blood glucose is low, then glucagon comes in, brings it back up to 5 millimoles, right? So that's an example there. Can the nervous system do that? Yeah, we've actually seen an example of how the nervous system can do that through a reflex. For example, when you touch something hot, right, then the temperature in your skin is going to be too hot. You obviously don't want that. You want to decrease temperature back. So what the nervous system allows you to do is you quickly retract your hand by flexing your biceps, and that really makes your hand go away from the hot stimulus, right? To keep it in a constant environment, right? So this can be true. And the next one can involve chemicals, right? Yeah, so firstly, hormones are all chemicals, isn't it, right? So that's true. And then the nervous system, yeah, nervous system is mainly electrical. Remember, the communication between neurons is chemical through neurotransmitters, right? So this one's also true. And then the last one can involve the brain, right? So the nervous system, that's clearly the brain, isn't it? It's the central nervous system is part of the brain. Can the endocrine system involve the brain? This is true, guys. So remember a key aspect, so the heart of the hormonal system, if you like, some people consider it as the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is a special region of your brain, a really small part of your brain. And also, if you think about your pituitary as well, which is associated with your hypothalamus, right? Those two things are really important. They're part of the brain, but they're the main part. You can think of it like that as the hormonal system. So this is also true. So hopefully, guys, you can appreciate then that the answer here would be H. So hopefully, guys, that has made sense, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next question. All right, guys, so welcome back. So previously, we were looking at BMAT 2013, question 1. And I think the real struggle people probably have in this question is the last statement can involve the brain. So just remember, the hormonal system also includes, the pituitary and also the hypothalamus, which are really critical for the endocrine system, as you will come to see when you come to university. But you don't have to know about the details at this stage. But now, guys, we move on to the same paper, question 9. This is in a reflex in which a person touches a hot plate and pulls their arm away. So we've actually looked at this one, so that should be a clue there. Neurons of different lengths are involved. Which answer identifies the relative lengths of the neurons? So guys, pause the video, give yourself a minute, be back after that minute, we'll be going through the solution. Okay, guys, so let's go through this. So let's just draw that diagram again. So you have a hand, right? So this is my awful diagram of a hand, right? And then you have the spinal cord. So let's just say there's a cross section of the spinal cord, somewhat like this, right? That's really bad, but it shall do. Let's just complete that. Yeah, so that's the spinal cord. So then you're gonna obviously have a sensory neuron which is gonna sense the pain or the high temperature, isn't it, guys? And then remember the cell body of the sensory neuron is really close to the spinal cord. And essentially what it's gonna do is gonna enter the spinal cord dorsally, so from the back, right? So that's where the sensory information enters, right? And then from here you're gonna have a relay neuron, which is gonna essentially, as it says on the tin, relay the information from the back to the front, and it's gonna essentially relay the information to motor neurons. And then motor neurons will have their cell body ventrally or at the front, tummy side, and then that's essentially from there is going to go and activate your biceps. So your biceps are the main muscles which are involved in flexing your hand and pulling your hand away from a hot stimulus, isn't it? So this is going to go to your biceps, and obviously your biceps aren't as far down as your hands. They're more proximal, so they're closer to your trunk. Right, so just looking at that, guys, you can just easily answer this question. So the relay neuron is super short, so this one has to be the shortest one. So you have this option or this option, and I just am out figuring out which one's the longest one. So the longest one is clearly the sensory neuron in this case, isn't it? Because the sensory neuron is going all the way from your hand to your spinal cord, whereas your motor neuron is only going from the spinal cord. It still has to travel out, but not as far out. It only has to go to your biceps. So the longest one would be your sensory neuron. Yeah, and then the middle one would be the motor neuron. So hopefully, guys, you can appreciate F is the answer. And hopefully that was a quick revision, guys, of how reflexes work. But guys, I hope to see you in the next video. All right, guys, so welcome back. So previously, we were looking at BMAT 2013 question 9, where we had a quick revision on how reflexes work, and we had another nice juicy question on that. But now, guys, we move on to BMAT 2013, again with a star, indicating that quite a few people was slipped up on this question. So it says, which of the following could be found in an adult liver cell? And they have 3 options. So guys, pause the video, give yourself a minute. Be sure to be back after that minute. We'll be going through the solution. Okay, guys, so let's go through this. So an adult liver cell, right? So an adult liver cell, would it have the gene for amylase? Remember, the main places amylase is made is the mouth, right? And and all of the macromolecules, the enzymes also come from the pancreas, right? But would the adult liver cell have the gene for amylase? So it doesn't produce amylase, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have the gene for amylase. In fact, all your cells, guys, have the same gene. So your brain cell has the same genes as your liver cell, as your heart cell. All of those guys, they all have the same genes. It's just that through the process of differentiation, some genes are turned on, whereas others are turned off in specific. So, for example, let's just say in your brain, in your neurons, you're going to have the gene which is going to make dendrites, which are the branches of the neuron. Whereas in your let's take for example in your beta cell of the pancreas, you're going to have yes, you're going to have the gene for insulin, but only there it's going to be made. It's not really going to be made in the brain, isn't it? But remember, all cells have all genes because they've all come from a common clone through mitosis of the zygote, right? So which one could be found? So this one could be found. Could you find sex chromosomes? Yeah. So all your cells have 23 pairs of chromosome, 2 of which of them are going to be your sex chromosomes. And in an adult liver cell, would you find starch? Right, so starch is more of a plant thing, isn't it, guys? So you won't find starch. More so, the storage form in humans, in an adult liver cell, would be glycogen. So this one can't be it. So hopefully, guys, you can appreciate then that the answer in this case would be E. So hopefully, guys, that was of some interest to you guys, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next question. Okay, guys, welcome back. So previously, we were looking at this question 21 in BMAT 2013. Hopefully, it didn't cause too many difficulties. I think the main thing that might have tripped up a few students is statement 1, the gene for amylase. Remember, all cells have the same gene, just that in some cells the gene is expressed and in other cells is not expressed. By expressed, I basically mean that you actually use the gene to make protein and therefore use the protein for some function. But now, guys, we move on to BMAT 2012, question 1. It says, which of the following could result in a homeostatic response? So, guys, pause the video, give yourself a minute, make sure you're back after that minute where we'll be going through the solution. Okay, so homeostatic response, guys. Remember, homeostasis is the idea that you want to maintain a constant internal environment. So when you go up, you want to come back down. When you go down, you want to come back up. So if you have a rise in an internal condition, say blood glucose, that's a common example. That's obviously going to lead to a homeostatic response, right? For you to bring the glucose back down. So this is true. And in a similar vein, a reduction in, for example, in glucose would make you want to come back up, leading to a homeostatic response. This is also true. A rise in an external condition. This is also true, guys. So external conditions basically affect internal conditions, which then cause your homeostatic response. So, for example, if it's hot outside, then what's going to happen is that internally you would inadvertently be hotter, and therefore you have homeostatic responses mainly controlled by the hypothalamus, which is going to cause your temperature to go back down. So this is true, and in a similar vein, number 4 should also be true. So hopefully, guys, you can appreciate then that F would be the correct answer in this case. So hopefully, guys, that has made sense, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next clip. Okay, guys, so previously we looked at this question, BMAT 2012, question 1, talking about homeostatic responses. Hopefully, this idea of homeostasis is really ingrained in your brain now, guys, and this is really the topic of this series of videos, isn't it? So now, guys, we move on to BMAT 2012, question 5. So it says the diagram below shows part of the breathing apparatus of a human. Which of the table correctly identifies the location affected by 2 chemicals found in cigarettes and by 2 diseases associated with smoking? So, guys, pause the video, make sure you're back after a minute, and be sure to come back after a minute. We'll be going through the solution. Okay, guys, so welcome back. So, what are these areas first? So, brain area 1 would be clearly the brain, right? Area 2, that's really looking at where the trachea bifurcates, isn't it? But it's still in the trachea, it seems like. So we're just going to call this airways, right? And then area 3, so those are the balls which are coming off these sheaths, and these are obviously just air-filled sacs, which are going to be the alveoli. And then 4 is going to be the pulmonary artery, right? Or pulmonary capillaries, if like, because those are the places which are. So let's actually write that. So it's going to pulmonary arteries therefore give rise to the pulmonary capillaries. And can you see, guys, the pulmonary capillaries really sort of branch out, have many branches, sort of really wrap around the alveoli, which is going to essentially really maximize the contact between air and blood, which can really maximize diffusion through increasing surface area. You've probably heard about Fick's law. If you increase surface area, therefore you should also increase the rate of diffusion. And this is commonly likened, guys, to an onion bag. So the pulmonary capillaries are like the onion bag, and the alveoli are like the onions. So so which chemical in smoking would be affected by would affect the brain? So that's probably just talking mainly about addiction, isn't it? And addiction is really mediated by nicotine. So therefore, it should be either B or D. And then number 2. So what's number 2? So number 2 is the airways, right? And then so the airways, so the bronchus and bronchioles, partly the trachea as well. So hopefully, guys, it's clear that it will be this one. So it'll be this option, bronchitis. So essentially, anything that ends in itis, guys, is just inflammation. So bronchitis is inflammation. Is going to be inflammation of the bronchus and essentially the airways. And really, that's what smoking does, isn't it? So because it has all these toxins and stuff, it sets up an inflammatory response in the airways. And that's really not bad because it really clogs the airways up. And that's why it's really hard to breathe in. So from this, guys, we basically got the answer, isn't it? But we can just still go through it. And number three, this is just an emphysema. That's true. So emphysema is essentially destruction of elastic tissue. So your alveoli isn't like normally isn't elastic as it should be. So when there's no air in the alveoli, rather normally it will just collapse in. So think about it, it's like a balloon, isn't it? So when the air goes out of the balloon, it just collapses upon itself because of the elastic energy, isn't it? Whereas if you don't have the elastic, once you're expanded, it will just remain expanded, and that's why these people who has emphysema, their chest is just expanded because their lung never essentially collapses. So hopefully you understand that one would be emphysema. And then number four, area four, which is essentially pulmonary capillaries. And the thing inside the pulmonary capillaries is essentially going to be blood. And thing inside blood is red blood cells. And in red blood cells, you have hemoglobin. And carbon monoxide really affects hemoglobin, isn't it? Because hemoglobin actually likes carbon dioxide more rather than oxygen. So if you had the choice, oxygen or carbon monoxide, it'll go with carbon monoxide. And that obviously means that you can't transport as much oxygen, not enough oxygen to your tissues, and essentially your tissues are going to die, which is really bad. So hopefully, guys, you can understand and that B is the correct answer in this case. So hopefully, guys, that has made sense, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next clip. All right, guys. So previously, we were looking at BMAT 2012 question 5 to do with this question about smoking and how it affects the physiology of the lung and the associated vasculature. But hopefully, guys, that has made sense. Without further ado, guys, we're going to move now on to BMAT 2012 question 9. It says, in one type of neurological disease, neurons are unable to detect a certain stimuli, which would normally cause pain. And this is actually true, guys. There is a condition where you can't detect pain, and this is really bad because normally, for example, when you bite your tongue, you know to stop because it really hurts. Whereas if you bite your pain, it doesn't really hurt. You just essentially end up eating off your tongue. And I remember seeing really nasty images of that. So this is actually a thing. So in a patient with this disease, which of the following could be true? So guys, pause the video, give this question a shot, and be sure to be back after a minute. We'll be going through the answer. So guys, welcome back. Let's go through this. The patient would not show a reflex action to the stimulus. This is true because obviously if you can't sense the pain, you essentially have a cut in your reflex arc. You don't have the sensory neuron, therefore you're not going to have the relay neuron, therefore you're not going to have the motor neuron, because the sensory neuron is the thing that kicks it all off, so it can't be this. Actually, sorry, this one is right. What am I talking about? So this one should be true. So the patient would not show a reflex. That's true. It says, the patient would be able to take appropriate action if they could see the application of the stimulus. Yes, this is true. So if they see it, then that's essentially the eyes and therefore the brain would figure out that something's going on. So you still have the sensory arc through vision. So through vision, that's not affected. But if you're only feeling it, that's going to be affected because you can't feel pain. But you can see it. You can have the sensory arc from there. So this one. Yeah, so the patient would be able to see if they see the stimulus, they could take action. And then it says the patient would be able to sense pain, but would not be able to respond to it. No, because they don't even have the pain fibers to sense anything, isn't it? So this one can't be right. And then lastly, guys, it says the patient would be able to sense pain, but will not be able to the patient will be able to sense pain, but will not be able to communicate this to the brain, right? So yeah, they can't sense the pain at all, isn't it? So this one's completely wrong as well, because they can't sense the pain, and if they can't sense the pain, they can't carry that information to anywhere, right? So both 3 and 4 are wrong. So hopefully, guys, you can appreciate then that 1 and 2 are going to be the correct answer. So the answer would be A in this case. So hopefully, guys, that has made sense. Really look forward, guys, to seeing you in the next clip. All right, guys, so welcome back. So previously, we were looking at this question, BMAT 2012, question 9, where we were talking about this condition where you can't sense pain. So hopefully, guys, that has made sense. But without further ado, guys, we're going to move on to question 17 of BMAT 2012. So it says the consumption of alcohol leads to an increase in dilute urine production by reducing the level of the hormone ADH. This is actually a thing. It says, which of the following are correct statements about alcohol and or ADH? So guys, give yourself a minute. Be back after that minute. We'll be going through the solution. Okay, guys, so welcome back. So let's go through this. So again, guys, ADH, they seem to love ADH. Again, this is a really important topic in association with the rest of the kidney. So this ADH travels in the bloodstream. Yeah, that's true. So remember, ADH is a hormone, so it's part of the hormonal system. And hormones, they travel in the blood to send their messages, right? So this one has to be true. And then the next one, it says there's a positive correlation between the level of ADH and the production of dilute urine. So if you have ADH, remember, guys, it's going to make holes in your collecting duct. So water is going to seep out, right? And if water seeps out, that means that your urine is going to be more concentrated. So if you have more ADH, your urine actually becomes less dilute. So this actually should be a negative correlation. So this one can't be true. And then it says increased ADH leads to increased formation of dilute urine. Well, we just explained that, isn't it? So it actually leads to increased formation of concentrated urine. And guys, since all the options only 2 of them have to be right, 4 has to be right. And therefore the answer would be C. But let's just make sure 4 is right. A reduced level of ADH can lead to dehydration. Yes, this is true. So if you have less ADH, then you're essentially losing all the water. You're losing all the water through your urine, isn't it? And therefore you're not going to have enough water in your body, and therefore you're going to have this sensation of dehydration. And this is actually a thing. So there's some patients who can't produce ADH, and essentially they're always dehydrated, they're always thirsty, they're always just gulping water. This is actually a thing. So this one has to be true then. So hopefully, guys, you can appreciate this ADH thing and you really understood how this question worked. But hopefully, guys, we can see you in the next video.